Impact Interview is sponsored by the Pocono Mountains, where small town charm meets big adventures. Book your trip today by visiting PoconoMountains.com.
Welcome back. Time for our Impact Interview. Our guest this week garners universal respect for her versatility to cover a wide range of sports at the highest level. World Cup soccer, the NFL, Stanley Cup playoffs, Major League Baseball, and college football, of course. And here's the cool, you might not have known stuff. Her dad was on the '76 U.S. Olympic hockey team. Mom was a speed skater. Husband played hockey at Boston U, played some in the NHL, and on the Olympic team. The one and only Jenny Taft from Fox Sports. Welcome to Nittany Game Week. Thanks so much for joining us.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you guys so much. I'm very flattered and happy to be here.
Well, look, it's all true, so we had to get it out there, and we're hockey fans around here, too. We might talk about that sport in just a little bit. But, I mentioned your family's athletic ability, but you were an accomplished athlete in your own right, a 4-year letter winner in lacrosse at Boston University. So talk about the impact your career had in your life and your career choice, because I'm sure that background helps the job performance when you can relate to the athletes on the field.
Sure. I mean, that's a great way to put it, because in so many ways, when I was in college, I always wanted to play a sport growing up, right? But I always knew I wanted to stay in sports. And the reality is, I was a pretty good lacrosse player. I was a pretty good hockey player, but I wasn't always playing. I sat on the bench a lot of the time in college as well. I'm not going to be too confident here. And I always wanted to be around the game. So for me, I always tell people that I feel like I'm so close to the game as a sideline reporter. It's the closest I get to that rush from playing sports. It's that red light going on and just being around it. And I do think that because I had the experience as a D1 athlete of understanding the schedule of what these guys are going through, I do understand some of those obligations and how hard it is to manage everything. So it's given me a great perspective. I feel really old sometimes. I just turned 35 and I'm like, college was a long time ago now. And I'm like, I can't say I just graduated from BU, but the experience has helped me so much. And I loved Boston University. They had a great journalism school. So I wanted to do it always. I mean, you mentioned my husband played at BU. I would pretend to interview him in college, and he gave me a hard time at the time, but it clearly was worth it because I had that experience. So it was a great experience overall. And I'm happy for those 4 years I had at BU.
Jenny, to the outside world, sometimes fans think that you just show up and cover the game and talk, but your versatility puts you out there covering a wide range of sports. Can you give us some insight into how you prep for a big college football game? How different is that from other sports like World Cup soccer?
I love talking about college football prep because I do find it really interesting. And there's so much behind the scenes that a lot of people don't really realize. And that's okay. I mean, the role of a sideline reporter is kind of the eyes and ears of someone on the field, right? I relay a lot of information to Joel and Gus and our producer, Chuck McDonald, throughout the game. So I'm kind of constantly in communication. But going into the game, what I really love about our crew, Gus and Joel and myself, we really have this overarching understanding of the team. So we pride ourselves on knowing a lot about both teams. So we don't script out a lot. So let's say we're having a conversation. I mean, I've had a lot of Michigan games the past couple of weeks, and I know you guys are talking to me because we're about to have a big Michigan game. But we know these players so well. So let's say we're talking about their QB, JJ McCarthy. And we have so many different angles to the story, but I can add that next layer. And I've spent a lot of time talking to him on the phone, or I met with him in person. Sean Clifford and I have had plenty of conversations before the season started that all of that will be relevant at some point later on. So it's so much of the prep is leading up, and you might not use all of it, right? You have all of these stories just in case. And then I always believe that the stuff you find on the field, any coach conversations that you're able to kind of get a little sense of what's being said, or any in-game adjustments, those are the best reports always. So I always try to offer that. But the prep is so much before. I'm about to get on the phone with some Michigan players after we wrap up this interview. So it's constantly changing. Every week is different. And you just have to be so well read about all of these teams and make sure that those relationships are built with the coaches as well. So when you need to call on them in those moments, they will respect you and give you that time.
Jenny, with the number of Michigan games you've already done, it seems that the Fox Big Noon slot has turned into Michigan Television Network. Since you've been since you've seen Michigan in person already, can you tell Penn Staters just how good these Michigan guys might be?
Well, first of all, I laughed because the big noon slot, like initially when a couple years ago when Fox told us that this was their plan, we were all like, great. I mean, we can get home Saturday night. That sounds like a great idea. And it has been a big success for the most part. There are some teams and some coaches that don't like the earlier start. And I understand that it's recruiting. There's so much that goes into it, but do find that the noon slot has been really fun and effective. And it's cool to have that brand recognition with the Fox crew being there at noon, which I think has been a great success in a lot of ways. And then back to the other part of the question was Michigan football. I think what's so unique about this team is we saw their potential last year. And they replaced a lot of good players as well. But I think J.J. McCarthy is a player that we've only just seen the beginnings of, and he's just scratching the surface of his potential. I have spent a lot of time with him. I think that he is a very impressive young individual that has a lot of talent and very respected by his teammates. They have weapons, like they're just starting to figure themselves out. And then defensively, they've had some big moments. I mean, they have all of the potential, but I don't know if I've seen enough to know just how great this team will be. I know the direction they're going. And on that note, I don't make any of these decisions. Like the fact that we've had Michigan, this will be 4 weeks in a row. It's kind of like, I don't want to be the Michigan network. It just happens that way. But I think 2 years ago, I was at Ohio State like 8 times. So I go where I'm told. I just love a good story and I love getting to know the players. But at least in that respect, it's fun to have repeat games. Like I've already covered Penn State. So how nice that I can touch back in with the players because a lot has changed since week 1. So that's kind of nice for me and fun to do.
Yeah, and this is a fun part of the year because you get to figure out where teams are going. And by the way, just tell your neighbors, yell, "We are," and see if they respond to you.
Oh, I know. Like I moved to Michigan because my husband is coaching hockey here, and there are so many Michigan flags. And I'm like waiting for the neighbors to understand what I do or like see if they're going to want to like get tickets. And no one has really figured it out yet. So I'm kind of trying to keep it on the DL until the end of the season because I don't have tickets to give out. Everyone wants tickets to games. Like I wish I could help everyone. And you guys are popular too.
Yeah, someone in the neighborhood will figure it out. Well, look, as someone who grew up in Big Ten country, how much fun has it been to be part of so many of these Big Ten broadcasts across so many campuses? And along with that, we're all aware the conference footprint is going to expand all the way to the left coast. So I guess you're looking forward to having some Big Ten games in your old backyard in the future.
Yeah, of course. I moved right when USC, UCLA. I think it's exciting for the direction of football and like a lot is changing. It's evolving constantly. I love both of those programs. I think it's been fun to see what Lincoln's done with USC and what Chip's been doing with UCLA. So look, I know we're going to be seeing them a lot. I won't be able to drive to practice as easily, which is a little bit of a bummer. But I think the growth of the Big Ten is exciting. And I grew up in Minnesota. So Big Ten country is all I've known. And that was often hockey. Growing up, my dad, you mentioned, played, but he went to Wisconsin. My mom went to Wisconsin. She actually lived in Madison. That was when she started speed skating as a young girl. And my grandpa worked at the university in the 60s. So like, I've always been a Badger. How I grew up was going to Camp Randall and that energy. And I loved that place, but they didn't have a lacrosse team. And respectfully, Mark Johnson told me that I wasn't good enough to play on his women's hockey team because they're incredible. So I knew that going to Wisconsin and trying to play ice hockey probably wouldn't have been a good fit. And I love Mark. He's an incredible coach. And what he's done with that women's team is amazing. So long story short, the Wisconsin part of me is how I grew up. And BU was just a great fit for school. But like, it's all the Big Ten schools. I mean, I would have been happy going to any of them. Like, I just love what Big Ten stands for. And I really believe that I have the dream job. And I don't take that for granted. I understand it's a job that so many would love to have. And every Saturday, I'm like, this is the best. Like, I hope it comes across how much fun I'm having because I genuinely am. And I think that I try to have that come across.
Well, it definitely comes across in your broadcast as someone who's watched a few college football games in my day. Hey, I'm going to, going beyond this week with the Penn State-Michigan game, looking ahead 2 weeks, you mentioned to us that you have not done a Penn State game in Happy Valley. What are you really looking forward to? We don't want to get ahead of ourselves in the schedule, but we're going to get ahead of ourselves. Just curious as to how excited you are to come to Happy Valley in a couple weeks.
Everything. I'm looking forward to everything. I mean, it's one that Joel Klatt and I always chat. Like, the fact that we haven't visited you guys is kind of ridiculous, considering how many times I've covered Penn State on the road. I mean, that's just not fair at this point. So it's everything Happy Valley, but truly, like, I will be a sponge to you guys. Tell me where to go, tell me what to eat, to see, to experience. But it's one of those fan bases that watching on TV, like, it speaks for itself. And I have a feeling that I'm going to have one of those goosebump moments when I experience that crowd. So I cannot wait. And I mean, I know we don't jump ahead, but it cannot come soon enough in a lot of ways.
Jenny, I have the same problem that you have. On this show, I just go where I'm told. Whatever they tell me to do, I go. And when you're in Penn State, I'll tell you where to go. You go to Jay Paterno's house. Free food there. Whatever you want, put it on my tab.
Perfect.
And a couple of daughters that played college lacrosse too as well.
That's where you go. Hey,
Great.
we can't let you go without a hockey question. And this one is a two-part question. We're on in Philly and Pittsburgh, where there are a really strong fan base for the Flyers and the Penguins. So the question is this: who do you like to win the Cup this year? And does either team from PA have a shot at winning it all this year?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm going to go Minnesota Wild here. Like, you guys know I'm going to go with my Wild. And we got Krill the Thrill. No, I love watching him. Like, what an incredible get for Minnesota. I mean, I like Minnesota. I don't know if I can go all the way for you guys. I feel like Philly's kind of in a rebuild situation. Torts is hard to play for. Should we leave it at that? I mean, I feel like that's, you either love him or you hate him, and it works or it doesn't. Like, we'll see. Like, he has so much experience, so we'll see what he brings to the mix there. And I think the Penguins are always a team to think about. Mike Sullivan, actually, he was at BU when I was a student and was one of my husband's coaches. So I feel like he's a really impressive coach, and I'm going to go with the Penguins have more of a shot, but I'm ultimately going to go with Minnesota. So that's my final answer.
Your diplomacy is fantastic. You don't have to worry about that in Philly, though, because they're grilling their team. But yeah, they're in a rebuild for sure. Anything else, guys?
We're good.
A rebuild.
Yep. Jenny, thanks so much. We really appreciate it. We could talk a little bit more hockey, but we know you got to talk some football with the Michigan guys. We're really looking forward to having you here in Happy Valley in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And enjoy the game at the Big House.
Thank you guys for having me, and we will chat plenty more. Hopefully a lot of fun coming our way, and just thanks for the time, and thanks.